final in this section was the importance of differences in a story. You've talked about differences in the Old Testament, so I'll take you to something that took place in 1991. I flew from Toronto to Saskatoon to pick what I hope was my future wife to Winnipeg to be met by my parents, and then be taken to my hometown for a visit and to meet the rest of the family. I had asked about the arrangements with my parents and ensured that there was room and food for 2 more there. They agreed, and later my parents were talking to me about the trip. It was more my father that was talking, and we were confirming some of the details. And I said that I was coming on the whole trip, and talked about the details of the trip from Toronto to Saskatoon and then to Winnipeg, and when I needed to be picked up and so on. So my mother piped in and wanted to know how many noses are coming. Was I coming alone, or was there going to be somebody else along? And I said we're both coming. Did I go? I sure did. Did I go alone? I didn't. But when I'm talking to my father about the fact that I'm coming, I'm needing to be picked up, and anybody else that comes along with me, they ride for free. Why the difference? We have to look at the audience. In this case, my father needed to know what time that he should come to the Winnipeg airport to pick us up. And whether he's picking me up or picking more than one up, he needed to be there at a certain time. So we're looking at the audience. So the details were highlighted in the context. My parents were talking about the details and the point of my trip. My mother is needing to know for how many beds to have, and she's needing to know about additional food for more people. So she's interested in that aspect of the things. My father is interested in knowing what time he's going to be at the airport to pick up how many people are there. We need to look in general at the location of the incident and the viewer. I was driving in Hamilton and I saw a truck stop suddenly in front of me. When I hit him because I couldn't stop, the truck driver felt the back of the truck move to the right. I saw him come at me. You know, it's scary to think about all these years later. He's coming at me and I can't stop. And the police didn't see that, but they did see the tire marks behind me that neither of us saw. So our stories were different depending upon where we were and what we saw. The pieces of the story added together to make the whole story. The truck driver didn't see me. All he felt was just a gentle move to the right. I was glad for that, because that meant that he wasn't injured. I saw him coming at me, and I couldn't stop, so that was kind of scary. And the police looked behind and was able to confirm how fast I was going by the skid marks and some other things. So there's some confirmation. The police wasn't there, but they saw evidence that was behind that put the whole picture in perspective. And then there's another issue, is the credibility of the witnesses. There's a fellow a few years ago wanted to punish me and gave some false testimony about me. That testimony was refuted by others. He said that I was yelling and waving my hands. Those who heard were in the area but didn't see what was going on because they were facing in a different direction, or there's an obstruction, like a curtain, that they couldn't see me. They said they didn't hear me yelling. Those that could see further down, they didn't see me waving my hands. So those that were in a position to hear didn't hear me. Those that were in a position to see saw that I had my hands down to the side and I wasn't waving my hands. The differences in the story were important, and it discredited the accuser. evidence and testimony is a more involved topic. At another time before that, I was working somewhere and people came and told me a testimony about legal things. It was clear when people told a consistent story and told me things that they could not have seen, that there was a suspicion of collusion. If somebody, behind that curtain had said they'd seen me and that they got their story mixed up with somebody and they're saying things that they couldn't have done. Differences in a story depending upon location of the viewer are prima facie evidence that there's a true testimony. So I was saying that differences in the story depend on the location of the viewer, and variation is the prima facie evidence that there's a true story. So in this case, we have an observer number one seeing something that's going on, and we've got somebody here that's a member of the public, and we got me. And we have an observer over here too. Let's look at what happens here when this person decides to run this way. I, in my testimony, say that I ran this way. So I ran to the left. This guy says I ran to the left. This guy says I ran to the right, because he's facing us and he's seeing something different. Number one sees that I intercepted this member of the public, and I did so at a point here. Number two says that I intercepted the person about there. And again, they're seeing this. So my testimony that I'm telling says I went to the left and I intercepted him, but I don't where. Number one says that I intercepted him here. Number two says I intercepted him there. Neither of these are measured it, and they just sort of winged it. How are we going to resolve this? Well, the orientation of the viewer will make it possible to reconcile whether we move to the left or the right. This guy is facing this way and is seeing it. I've moved to the left. This guy is facing us this way, and I'm moving to his right, not to his left. So we can resolve that by looking at it. And where the intersection occurred in this case is of secondary importance because the guy has been apprehended. So whether I've caught him here or there, it doesn't make that much difference to me, and I didn't talk about that. So differences can be reconciled when we're looking at things, and you have three different testimonies of what's occurred. This one, me, and this one, and the details don't all line up. He says I went to the right. These two, we say that we went to the left, or that I went to the left, and where I caught him, the one says here, the other says there, and I say nothing. But I say that I've caught the guy. So here's a case where we see the contradictions are sorted out, and the details in here. So anyway, the whole business of what is acceptable testimony and how to discredit things, there's more than one course on that to figure out whether a testimony is true or not, and whether it should be discredited or not. And J. Warner Wallace is one that's a detective, and there's other detectives that have had a look at the Bible, and they say that the differences have less variability than some of the live cases that they've dealt with.